Well, let's talk about why it's taken so long. We said we've demoed everything up. We literally demoed every song on the album up. We multi-tracked it. We did rough takes of the drums, and that's more or less the process that we went through to produce the Time Never Lasts EP.
Yeah.
Those were just the demos of those songs.
Yeah.
The drums were one take, literally. They were just rough as hell, loads of mistakes, sloppy playing. I mean, I'd never normally have ever countenanced releasing anything like that, but I don't know, at the time maybe I was a bit more chilled out than I am now. But I think it was cool in a way to release something that wasn't perfect for once, or wasn't perfect in our eyes. You know, I'm not saying any of the albums are perfect, but but we didn't really give the kind of quality control to that release that we normally would, and that was kind of the point of it. It was just like, these are 2 demo tracks that they still sound good and they're mixed relatively well, you know, and the songs kind of did what they were doing at that time. But since we did those,
show progression.
It
something to people.
Yeah, it was nice to put something out, and we had the live tracks on there, which obviously came out really good from the London show as well. They sounded really decent, so we wanted to get them out there as well. Since we did those 2 demos, we've obviously demoed up the rest of the album in a similar way, but to a higher standard. Every time we did a new track, we'd come up with a new way, refine the process.
And some element of gear had improved on each of them.
Yeah, so that led to a lot of fun when we tried to marry them all up together and get them all sounding the same. Stuff on the Time Never Lasts EP, the first 2 songs, Time Never Lasts and Inside the Godmind, those songs are both pretty much the same on the album.
Yeah.
It's just they're played a whole lot better.
Yeah, and again, you can see the differences in little tiny detail.
Yeah.
That, you know, at the end of the day, practicing all that time made that difference.
I mean, you can really hear the different, 3 years of drum practice on the drum takes. Well, 3 years of playing drums a little bit. I don't want to give the impression I've been practicing for 3 years.
Just playing drums for 3 years.
That'd be a lie. So that's more or less the demos. I mean, everything was done to a click track again, which we always do everything to a click track, don't we?
Yeah.
I think Legions was the only thing we've done without a click, wasn't it? Yeah. And we could have probably done with a click track on Legions.
Yeah.
I think the reason it was so hard to record was because it didn't have a click track.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just going to play this song at the speed I think it's going to be at. I think it's got to be at 340 BPM. No, 300 actually. Yeah, do you remember that time when we started recording the guitars and I couldn't play the guitar because I'd done the drumming so fast?
Yeah.
Oh, it was terrible. Some of the bits you can hear the guitar, they're desperately trying to keep up with the drumming.
You find it just so much better recording to a click and structure it. I mean, some of the songs we've messed about with the click,
yeah, we really messed around with it, like relentlessly changing the tempos, tweaking the tempos, re-recording guide guitars, practicing to it again, recording bass and drums, and seeing how that felt with the feel, and really it helped us really dial everything right in, didn't it, tempo-wise?
Yeah, because getting the right tempo really affects the feel of the song.
Yeah.
And the feel of the songs are the most important thing, I should think.
Yeah. Say a song's 250 BPM, then you can say, well, if we have a double bass part that's in 16th at 250, there's a few things you can do with the way you play it to make it sound different.
Yeah.
Like you can accent it a bit differently and make it roll a bit more, make it a bit more sort of not so perfect and a bit more pounding if you accent some of the notes, which was fun to execute.
I found it fine.
Yeah, I bet you did. Yeah, but there's lots of little things. So there's a lot of, we were able to use the click to tighten our playing up and then loosen it in another way. Yeah. So
you start getting to the groove part of it, don't you?
Yeah, we were able to sort of use the click as a really strong framework and then just groove off it, because there's quite a lot of groove on the new album in terms of, well, as much as you can groove at 260 or whatever, but nonetheless, there's definitely a bit of groove.
Oh, always groove.
Yeah, that's an exclusive bit of merchandise that isn't available for sale. I've got one with Elvis on it, so not quite as good.
He's also in the band, well, he was. So, album concept, we decided to move away from the idea
of setting the album in ancient Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah, move away from the linked idea that we had behind.
Where all the albums run into each other in a thematic and musical and lyrical sense.
Yeah, and we didn't actively pursue to do that really. Like we had with Behind, especially, we did.
Yeah, the thing is, it's not to say that on the new album we've written lyrics that are radically different from the lyrics we've written before, because they're probably not, but capped off the trilogy with with Behind the Shadows. It was kind of like the story was put to bed really well, and the story that was crossing those albums, I think it sort of came to an end really naturally, and we didn't need to.
Yeah. I mean, you very much were like instigated the idea of the concept, really, basing it around time, just expanding, very much like the ideas did on the other albums. Do you know what I mean? It started from a
it starts from a nucleus, doesn't it? And then it just we just run with it, and we end up with a whole universe of ideas. And then I mean, the stuff that we've got on the old albums, I mean, for me personally, there's a whole world of stories around the albums that are all in my head, more or less, all written down somewhere in a book. That didn't get on the album and aren't anyway related to it.
It was massive, wasn't it? Because we spent so much time, especially, like you said, when we were practicing for 7 hours twice a week.
A lot of time to chew over different, philosophical ideas and, all sorts of stuff, really. Not, we still do that now, but, in a more focused way, I guess.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff's interesting when you're growing up and you're looking at different belief systems and working out what you believe and what you don't believe, or.
And because we went through that process, I think because we know each other in that way, we jump to, we sort of know what kind of ideas one's going to go, wicked about. Do you know what I mean? So it's just becomes more efficient, I suppose.
Yeah.
As you said, I mean, the album's got like the unifying concept of, like everything has the unifying concept of, obviously, of time. And on this album, I'm not going to say exactly what the concept's about in specifically and outline the story from A to B, as it were, because obviously the album's titled On Strange Loops, so there is no A to B, which is one clever thing about the concept.
Just an O.
Just an endless O. But yeah, I mean, lyrically, we've got similar themes that we had before. We've got a lot of kind of almost science fiction-y kind of lyrics, done really in science fiction. Kind of stories that you can imagine the setting that we're intending it to be set in is kind of a futuristic setting.
Yeah.
But the story could easily be translated into almost any setting, and then it would still work because, like all the best stories, you can transport them from one theatre into another theatre, and they still make complete sense. They're not relying on like gimmicks or particular sort of, conceits to make them work or to make them make sense.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's sort of turned into a story. The album has turned into a story when we weren't actively setting out. We were almost writing separate ideas.
Yeah, we were kind of going to have an anti-story album where all the songs were just separate, and we also said we weren't going to have an album where all the songs ran into each other, like on Behind the Shadows.
Yeah,
and
we failed at that one.
We failed on both counts, I think. Yeah, I think naturally we just gravitate towards that kind of sort of flow all the way through, with curveballs on the way. But I mean, lyrically the album follows a story, and musically it follows a story as well in the same sort of way. But I think this album's a bit different from other albums. It's got its own sort of shtick, really.
Yeah. Oh, completely, yeah. But it's very much a journey, just like Shadows was.
When I came up with the ideas for this album, I kind of had in the back of my mind that I wanted to make this album so over the top and so well done that it could be our last album, and that could be like, if that was our last album, then that would be great. Not that I'm saying I want this to be our last album, because I obviously don't.
And then we could do our country album.
Country album's next. Blues album.
Oh yeah. We'll have to get Chris in for that one. Yeah. No, I can't do that singing.
Rap album.
Oh yeah.
And of course the drum and bass album. And Steve's going to help us with the dubstep album.
Excellent. I've got it all planned out. So this section is about the guitars, because I was too scared to do the vocals part. That might be a slightly outrageous lie, but going through what guitars Leon uses and what he's going to be using on certain songs and on this album.
Yeah, well, I've got this Small Coloured Universe. It's obviously it's an Ibanez. This guitar was used on Behind the Shadows as well, and I used this guitar to do all the rhythm parts on Shadows. Whereas on Worlds Beyond the Veil, I used Black and Green Universe, UV7 BK, which had a darker sort of sound. It was a bit bassier, had a bit less mids, but this guitar really cuts through on the mid-range. It's got a sort of tighter sound, slightly clearer sound, and it's a bit of a thicker sound as well, even though it's not as bassy. Pickups are just the stock Blaze pickups, but I've had the pickups waxed, which does affect the sound a little bit. It tightens it up, and it means that whenever you play at a high volume, you don't get any of the feedback that you would normally get It really tightens the sound up. This guitar's tuned in A sharp, but the interesting thing about the way we tune our guitars is normally what you'd have if you had a 7-string guitar, you'd have basically between these strings you'd have, you know, E to E basically, so you'd have a 6-string tuning and then you'd have an extra bottom string. But what we do is we have a 6-string tuning between these strings, but a 6-string tuning tuned to A sharp, and then we have an extra top string which is an E flat. So it's slightly different. Effectively what happens is it means it shifts one of the intervals. So the reason for that is when we started writing a lot of songs back in '98, we had a guitar tune to B flat, but it was just a 6, so we didn't want to have to change the intervals when we went to 7. I suppose the other things to talk about, the strings I use, nothing exciting. I just use D'Addarios basically, normal standard D'Addario 10s. So I have a set of 10s here, and the bottom is a 60, which I think a 60 gives a slightly tighter sound on a sharp tuning, as opposed to a 56 or a 58, which I think sound a bit flappy. And we did use them in the past, didn't we?
We have, yeah.
Yeah, I think the 60 just sounds a bit better, and if you've got like sort of slid up harmonics and stuff, you know, stuff all over the bottom string, you just get a bit of a clearer tone, I think.
Yeah, I actually use a heavier string on my old bass, didn't I, to get a better tone, but on my newer ones it's not so bad.
On the Pros it's not as bad, is it? Pleckies, I just use the Dunlop Tortex 500s, they're the purple ones, they're 2mm, they're really thick. I just get on really well with thick plectrums, I don't know why, I just always have. Tried using sort of more standard sized plectrums that a lot of extreme metal players use, and I just don't think they sound as good for me personally, you know, with my picking style. We're considering using this guitar as for the second set of tracks, because I am planning on doubling all the rhythm parts up this time. On Shadows, we did double up all the rhythms, but then Lee turned them off in the final mix because it was a bit too much really with 4 guitars all playing those riffs. On this album, however, it sort of suits the sound a little bit more, and we've done a lot of demoing up with 4 tracks, you know, 2 tracks per side compared to 1 track per side, and the 4 tracks per side generally sounds quite good on most of the stuff, and it adds something, you know, thickens it up nicely. So this guitar might be used for the second set of takes, and it's a customised Ibanez Prestige. It's another 7-string. As you can see, it's been customised. Somebody put the monkey grip into it. I didn't do that, but it's handy, so it makes me less likely to drop it. Again, the pickups, well, these aren't stock pickups because these are DiMarzio Blaze pickups that I put in the guitar. The sound of those pickups is just great for what we play because they've got a bit more mid-range than the standard DiMarzios that you get in stock, and you know, compared to something like an Evolution, they've got a bit of a dark sort of more middly sort of sound. And again, it's got the D'Addario strings on it, and like all the new Ibanez 7s with the trem, this is a good trem, it's the Low Pro, which is a lot better. Don't know what else to say really.
That
of course,
cut at the back.
Oh yeah.
The cut out at the back where on the Universe it's got the big block bit on the back.
Oh yeah, of course, I forgot about that. Yeah, the handy thing about this guitar, obviously compared to the Universe, is it's got a proper cutout with a, you know, more of a sort of smoothed off edge. On the Universe it's more of a square block.
Very blocky, yeah.
Yeah, for me I've got really short fingers, so for me to get up here on the Universe with the square block is quite hard, so on this guitar it's much easier for me. So probably be using this guitar live if we get to do some gigs, just for convenience if nothing else. So I'm playing like some of the solos on Worlds when you've got all these kind of things, and we've got riffs on the new album where you've got like loads of picking on these high frets on the top of here. When you've got that big block in the way, you have to sort of bring your hand around quite a lot more. And the final guitar that we're going to use on the actual album is an Ibanez RG550. It's an original 550 from the 80s. As you can see, the headstock and the body do not match, so it's actually 2 guitars that have been stuck together. I actually bought this guitar from a sort of second-hand junk shop in Tor Bay in Devon, and it was £199, and it's probably the best £199 I've ever spent because I've written some of our best songs on this guitar.
Gloater.
Plays really nice, it sounds really clear, it's got a really sort of good recording tone. It's a bit softer than the Universe, the sound of it, but it's still got enough sort of mid-range sort of drive and crunch to cut through. On the new album, this is going to be used on 2 of the tracks, and when we double the tracks, I'm going to just use the guitar on all 4. I've got a Charvel Fusion that I used on previous albums to play a lot of the rhythms in the C-sharp tuning, but this guitar just sounds better on the new album for the songs we're doing and the kind of picking that we've got. There's a lot of sort of fast continuous picking and a lot of a bit less of the sort of choppy riffs, and this has got sort of a nicer sound on the continuously picked songs.
Good,
in my opinion. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, again, it's got D'Addario's on it, and obviously it's a set of 10s because there's no 7th string, there's no bottom 60. The pickups in the guitar are literally just the stock DiMarzios that were in it when it was made, I think. I've never had the pickups out, I've never had them waxed, I've never had to do anything with them. They just sound really good, so...
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy, really, yeah. And it's just got the normal Ibanez Floyd Rose, which is fine, actually, it's standing up pretty well. I mean, this guitar has just been battered to death. I've fixed it so many times, and it just keeps coming back for more, doesn't it? People have asked us some questions on Facebook, which we said we'd answer in the video diary. We'll go through a few of them now. Carlos Lewis has said, when will the new album come out? Which is a good question, but as you can see, we're making a studio diary, so the album is still in progress.
Yeah.
So
hopefully 2015 is
yeah, I mean, you know, as early as possible in 2015. It just depends how long it takes us to finish the recording, and you know, we've already done quite a lot of the mixing and, you know, pre-mixed a lot of the tracks where we've got all the elements in there, so we're quite close to a final sound now, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, bulk of the work left is guitar now.
Yeah.
Really. Recording.
Yeah, so 2015 then.
Right, so we've had another question from Grandfather Nebulous, Wesley Eddings and Richard and Tris about vinyl releases. Any possible past albums on vinyl? Will there be a vinyl release on the new one? So spill the beans.
Okay, there will be a vinyl release on Strange Loops. We're going to be releasing the vinyl ourselves through my own label, Galactic Records. The past albums, Forever Ants Legions, Was on the Veil and Behind the Shadows, we own the rights to them all now. We got the rights back from Candlelight. So yes, we will be looking at putting them out on vinyl, possibly remastered differently so they sound more dynamic on vinyl, or possibly just as they are, depending on how things go. That won't be done until we've finished on Strange Loops. We've been asked another question by Kazuo, which is, are you planning to have some badass intro song again? I'm assuming he means at the start of our new album. So what do you think about that, Rainer?
It's quite easy. Yes.
We are.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be extra badass.
Yeah, the intro track's a little bit different this time, isn't it, from what we've done before, but it's definitely badass.
Yeah, definitely.